Hi, and welcome back to Reddit Terrible Stories. I didn't want my roommate's partner using our kitchen for her small catering business. When I first moved into the apartment with my roommate Claire, things seemed fine. We had clear agreements about bills, chores, and shared spaces. Claire was easy to live with, organized, polite, and generally respectful. I thought I had lucked out. But things started to shift a few months into our lease, when Claire's girlfriend, Amanda, began showing up more and more often. At first, it was harmless sleepovers, a few times a week, occasional dinners together, and the usual shared living inconveniences. I didn't mind. Amanda seemed friendly enough, though she had a pushy energy that rubbed me the wrong way. The problem started with the kitchen. One Friday evening, I came home from work exhausted, ready to make myself a quick meal. But when I opened the door, I found Amanda there in full force. She wasn't just cooking a casual dinner, she had taken over the entire space. Pots boiled on the stove, baking sheets lined the counters, and ingredients covered every available surface. The apartment smelled amazing, but the sheer chaos was overwhelming. "Hey!" Amanda greeted me brightly, barely looking up from the tray of mini quiches she was pulling from the oven. "Hope you don't mind, I'm just finishing up a batch for tomorrow's order." I blinked, unsure I had heard her correctly. "Order?" I asked. "Oh yeah," she said casually. "I run a small catering side hustle, mostly brunches, bridal showers, stuff like that. Claire said it'd be fine if I use the kitchen sometimes. It's just easier here. My place doesn't have the space." I stood there in shock, staring at the counter piled high with food. Uh, how often is sometimes?" I asked carefully. Amanda shrugged. "Depends on demand. Could be once a week, could be more. Don't worry, I'll clean up after myself." That night, I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe Claire had just forgotten to run it by me. But over the next week, it became clear this wasn't occasional. It was regular. Every few days, I'd come home to find Amanda commandeering the kitchen, monopolizing the stove, and filling our fridge with trays of food labeled with sticky notes like, "Do not touch client order." It was intrusive. It was frustrating. And worst of all, neither Claire nor Amanda seemed to think they needed to check with me about it. At first, I told myself not to overreact. Maybe I could be flexible. Maybe it wouldn't last long. But each time I opened the fridge and realized I had no space for my groceries because it was packed with Amanda's catering supplies, my patience thinned. Each time I tried to cook a meal but had to wait because she was already mid-prep, I felt my resentment grow. This wasn't what I had signed up for when I agreed to live here. I thought I was sharing a kitchen with one roommate, not with her girlfriend's small business. And yet, I hadn't said anything. Not yet. Because I wasn't sure if I was ready to spark what I knew would turn into a fight. But deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time. The first confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was a Tuesday night, and I'd had a brutal day at work. I stopped by the store on my way home and picked up ingredients for a simple pasta dinner, nothing fancy. Just something quick to get food in my stomach before collapsing on the couch. But when I got back to the apartment, I found Amanda once again in the kitchen, elbows deep in dough and pans scattered everywhere. The stove was occupied with 3 different pots bubbling at once, and the sink overflowed with mixing bowls. She looked up and grinned like this was all perfectly normal. "Hey, careful. I've got a hot tray coming out in a minute. The counter's kind of a mess right now. Hope you don't need it." I stood there gripping my grocery bag, forcing a smile. Actually, I was planning to make dinner. "Oh," she said, stretching out the word like it was some kind of inconvenience. "Could you maybe wait an hour? I'm in the middle of a big batch for a client tomorrow. I promise I'll wipe everything down when I'm done." That was it. Something inside me snapped. "Amanda, I live here too," I said, sharper than I intended. "I can't keep waiting around to use my own kitchen. You're here cooking all the time." Her smile faltered, but only slightly. "Well, Claire said it was fine, and it's not like I'm making a mess forever. I always clean up." I glanced at the sink piled high with unwashed dishes and raised an eyebrow. "Right, sure, but that doesn't change the fact that this is my kitchen. I didn't agree to share it with your business." Amanda bristled, crossing her arms. "It's not that big of a deal. You're being kind of dramatic." Before I could respond, Claire walked in, clearly sensing the tension. "What's going on?" she asked, dropping her bag by the door. Your girlfriend, I said, pointing toward the chaos, is running her catering business out of our apartment, and I can't use the kitchen when I need to. Claire frowned, glancing between us. Babe, we talked about this, she said to Amanda. We said it should only be once or twice a week. Amanda shrugged. This week's just busy. And besides, it's not like I'm hurting anyone. You're hurting me, I cut in. I pay half the rent here. I should be able to cook dinner without scheduling around her business. Claire sighed, rubbing her temples. Okay, let's calm down. We'll figure something out. Maybe Amanda can limit the times she cooks here. But Amanda wasn't backing down. I'm not going to sabotage my business just because you want the stove free every night, she snapped at me. You can microwave something if it's that urgent. The audacity of that comment left me speechless. Microwave something? In my own apartment where I paid rent because she had decided our kitchen was her commercial workspace? I didn't even answer. I just set my grocery bag on the counter, squeezing it into the only tiny free spot, and started chopping vegetables, making as much noise as possible. Amanda glared but didn't say another word. That night after Amanda left with her trays of food, I sat down with Claire. I told her point blank that this situation wasn't working. I didn't sign up to live in a catering kitchen. I don't care that Amanda's your girlfriend. I didn't agree to share our apartment with her business. Either she stops using the kitchen, or we need to renegotiate how we're living here. Claire looked torn. She loved Amanda, but she also knew I had a point. Can we just talk about it more later? She said finally. I agreed, but the knot in my stomach didn't loosen, because I already knew Amanda wasn't the kind of person to compromise easily. And if Claire couldn't see that, then this wasn't just going to be a fight about the kitchen. It was going to be a fight about respect. The next few days were like walking through a minefield. Amanda didn't say much to me directly, but her presence in the apartment was louder than ever. Every time I walked into the kitchen, there she was, rearranging spices that weren't hers, spreading ingredients across the counters, or leaving giant trays cooling on our dining table. It felt like she was staking her claim, as if to remind me that she wasn't going anywhere. Claire tried to smooth things over, but she was caught in the middle. One night, while Amanda was in the bathroom, Claire whispered to me in the living room, "She's just stressed, okay? This catering thing is really important to her. If you could just be a little more patient." I cut her off before she could finish. No, I've been patient. I didn't complain the first few times, but this is our home, Claire, not her test kitchen. I can't live like this. Claire exhaled heavily like she was carrying the weight of both our frustrations. I'll talk to her again, I promise. But the talk didn't change much. Amanda toned it down for maybe 2 days, but then the same pattern resumed. Only this time, there was an edge to everything she did. When I left a plate in the sink overnight, she'd make a pointed comment about how some people don't respect shared spaces. If I asked her to move her equipment off the counter so I could cook, she'd sigh dramatically, like I was asking for the moon. It all came to a head on a Saturday morning. I'd planned to bake muffins for a work event. I got up early, set everything out, and preheated the oven. Just as I was mixing the batter, Amanda stormed into the kitchen, holding 2 grocery bags. "What are you doing?" she demanded. I blinked at her, making muffins. "Well, I need the oven for a catering order. I told Claire about it yesterday. Didn't she tell you?" "She didn't," I said flatly. "And even if she had, I don't care. I'm already cooking. You'll have to wait." Amanda's jaw clenched. "This is ridiculous. My food has to go out by noon. Your muffins can wait until later." "No," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I live here. You don't. You don't get priority in this kitchen. End of story." Her eyes narrowed. "You're seriously going to mess with my business because you're making muffins?" I met her glare. "Yes, because this isn't your business space. It's my home." She opened her mouth like she was going to fire back, but Claire rushed in, drawn by the raised voices. "What's happening now?" she asked, panic in her tone. Amanda spun toward her. "Your roommate is being impossible. She's trying to block me from cooking when I have paying customers waiting." Claire looked at me, desperate for me to back down. "Can't you just finish later?" The betrayal stung. "Are you serious? You're taking her side?" "I'm not taking sides," she insisted. Amanda's orders are time-sensitive. Yours aren't." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about the kitchen. Claire wasn't seeing the bigger issue that Amanda had slowly taken over our apartment and expected me to roll with it. And worse, Claire was enabling her. I put the muffins in the oven anyway. Amanda muttered under her breath the entire time I worked, but I ignored her. I refused to let her chase me out of my own space. By the time the muffins were done, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Amanda shoved her groceries onto the counter the second I pulled my tray out of the oven, banging pots around just to make her irritation obvious. I took my muffins and went straight to my room, slamming the door behind me. For the rest of the weekend, I avoided both of them. But I knew this was only the beginning. Amanda wasn't going to back off. And if Claire kept caving to her, I was going to have to make a decision soon. Either stand my ground harder than ever, or start considering if this living arrangement was sustainable at all. Because one thing was clear. Lines had been drawn, and Amanda had no intention of respecting mine. It didn't take long for Amanda to prove that the muffin incident wasn't just a one-off. Within the week, it felt like she'd doubled down on turning our apartment into her catering headquarters. She started bringing in bigger deliveries of supplies, sometimes leaving boxes stacked by the door or bags of produce crammed into our already small refrigerator. At first, I thought it was just temporary, like she'd cook a batch and move things out quickly, but no. The supplies lingered, taking up space we needed for our actual groceries. The kitchen became a revolving door of chaos, pots bubbling, pans sizzling, and Amanda moving around like she owned the place, humming as she worked. The smells were overwhelming, not in a pleasant home-cooked meal kind of way, but in an industrial, non-stop kind of way. Imagine waking up at 6 a.m. to the smell of 40 pounds of sautéed onions. That was my life. And the worst part, clients started showing up. Actual strangers at our apartment door, picking up trays of food or dropping off deposits. The first time it happened, I was in my pajamas, hair a mess, when a man knocked and asked if the order was ready. I stared at him like he was speaking another language before Amanda rushed out, laughing nervously, and handed him 2 foil pans. That's when I lost it. "Are you seriously running a pickup service out of here now?" I snapped as soon as the door closed. Amanda shrugged like it was no big deal. "It's just a couple of customers. It's easier this way." "This is not a restaurant," I shot back. "It's an apartment. Our apartment. You can't just invite random people to our home without asking." She rolled her eyes. God, you're so dramatic. They're not random. They're clients." That word clients made my blood boil. "I don't care what you call them. This is not your space to conduct business." Claire tried to intervene as usual. "Look, I get it's inconvenient, but it's temporary. She's building her portfolio. Once she saves enough, she'll get a proper place." "Temporary," I scoffed. "Claire, she's practically moved in. Half the fridge is hers, the counters are covered in her stuff, and now people are showing up at the door like we're some kind of deli. How much more temporary can this get before it's just permanent?" Amanda muttered something under her breath that I didn't catch, but I didn't need to. Her body language screamed defiance. She had no intention of scaling back. The breaking point came later that week when I got home from work and found the entire living room taken over. She had laid out 3 long folding tables covered in trays, containers, and stacks of packaging supplies. The smell of roasted chicken and garlic clung to everything. I dropped my bag and just stared. "What the hell is this?" I demanded. Amanda didn't even flinch. "Big order for tomorrow. I needed the space." "This is our living room." I could feel my voice rising, but I didn't care. "You can't just do this without asking. We live here. We pay rent here. You don't." She finally looked at me, calm as anything, and said, "Well, maybe if you weren't so selfish, you'd understand I'm trying to build something important. This isn't just about me. It's about supporting Claire, too." That stung. Supporting Claire? You're using her as an excuse to take over our apartment. Claire, who had been sitting quietly in the corner until then, finally spoke up, but not in the way I hoped. "She's not wrong," she said softly. "Amanda's business could really take off. And if it does, it benefits both of us. Don't you want to see her succeed?" I felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. So now I'm the bad guy for wanting to be able to use my own apartment without tripping over catering trays? Silence. Neither of them met my eyes. That night, I locked myself in my room and seriously considered looking at new places to live. But deep down, I was furious, not just at Amanda, but at Claire. This wasn't what I signed up for when we moved in together. And if Amanda wasn't going to respect the boundary, then I was going to have to draw it myself, in permanent ink. Because if I didn't, this wouldn't just be Amanda's catering business. It would become her home. And mine would disappear in the process. I woke up the next morning determined that something had to change. I couldn't keep pretending Amanda's temporary catering business wasn't consuming every corner of my life. The kitchen had become unusable. The living room was now a storage unit for food trays. And even my own bedroom reeked of garlic and butter because the smells seeped through the walls. I'd reached my breaking point. When I came out, Amanda was already in the kitchen, whisking something in a massive mixing bowl, flour dusting the air. Claire was perched on the counter, scrolling through her phone like this was completely normal. "All right," I said, planting myself in the doorway. "We need to talk. Now." Amanda didn't even pause her mixing. "Can it wait? I'm kind of in the middle of something." "No, it can't," I snapped. "This stops. Today. You're not running a business out of this apartment anymore." That finally made her put the whisk down. She turned, eyebrows raised, like I'd just insulted her personally. "Excuse me. You heard me," I said firmly. "No more clients coming here, no more bulk deliveries, no more trays covering the living room. This isn't your workspace. It's our home." Claire jumped off the counter, holding her hands up. "Hey, let's calm down," I cut her off. "No, Claire, I've been calm. I've been patient, and look where that got us." Our apartment smells like a restaurant. Strangers come and go, and I can't even cook myself a meal without bumping into Amanda's pans. "This is ridiculous." Amanda crossed her arms, glaring. "You're being unreasonable. I've already invested in this. I can't just stop because you're uncomfortable." "You can," I shot back, "because it's not your apartment. You don't pay rent here. You don't get to take over and act like you do." The room went still. For the first time, Amanda looked thrown off, her bravado slipping just a little. Claire stepped in quickly, her voice tight. "Babe, maybe we should find some middle ground." "There is no middle ground," I interrupted, my patience gone. "This isn't negotiable. If you want to run a business, you find a kitchen that's meant for it. Rent a space, get a permit. Do whatever you want, but not here, not in my home." Amanda scoffed, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "Wow. Way to be supportive. I didn't realize sharing space with you came with so many strings attached." "Sharing space?" I laughed bitterly. "You're not sharing, you're taking, and I'm done letting it happen." Claire looked torn, her eyes darting between us. "Can we at least give her some time to figure something out? She can't just stop overnight." "I'll give her a week," I said firmly. 1 week to clear her things out and stop using this place for business. After that, I'm done. Either she stops, or I'll take it to the landlord." Amanda's face flushed red. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I replied. I turned and walked away before either of them could say anything else. My heart was pounding, my hands shaking, but I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Control. For the first time, I'd made it clear that I wasn't going to be pushed around in my own home. But even as I closed my bedroom door, I could hear Amanda whispering furiously to Claire, her voice sharp and angry. And I knew that drawing the line was only the beginning. Amanda wasn't going to take this lying down. And part of me worried that Claire, my friend, my roommate, wasn't fully on my side. The first 2 days after I laid down the law, Amanda was oddly quiet. She still came around, but there were no massive deliveries or trays crowding the living room. I thought maybe, just maybe, she had gotten the message. But then the retaliation began, subtle at first, almost childish, but unmistakable. On the third morning, I went into the kitchen and found sticky residue all over the counters. Not just a little spill syrup, honey, and flour, smeared like someone had tried to sabotage the space on purpose. My cutting board was shoved under the sink, warped from water damage. And my brand new spatula, melted and tossed in the trash. When I asked Claire, she gave me a half-hearted shrug. "I don't know. Maybe it just got too close to the burner." Uts. I wanted to believe her, but the look on her face gave her away. She knew Amanda had done it. The next day, my groceries mysteriously disappeared. I opened the fridge to find half my eggs gone, my cheese missing, and the chicken I bought for dinner already cooked and stored in a Tupperware container that wasn't mine. When I confronted them, Amanda smirked and said, "Oh, I thought those were for everyone." Community fridge, right? "No," I said sharply. "It's not. I paid for those. Stop touching my food." She tilted her head like I was being ridiculous. "It's just food. Don't be so stingy." Claire tried to diffuse it with a laugh, but I wasn't laughing. This wasn't about eggs or chicken. It was about respect, and Amanda had none. By the end of the week, the apartment felt like a war zone. Amanda would crank up the music while she was in the kitchen, blasting it loud enough that I couldn't concentrate on my work. She started leaving her shoes by the door, muddy and smelling like grease. She even accidentally used my favorite coffee mug and chipped it, offering a sarcastic, "Oops," when I confronted her. I knew what she was doing. She was testing me, trying to make me miserable enough to cave in and let her run things her way. But instead of giving in, I documented everything. Every mess, every missing item, every deliberate inconvenience. I started snapping photos with timestamps, keeping track of the chaos. Claire, on the other hand, grew more and more tense. She'd defend Amanda 1 minute and complain about her the next. I could tell she was stuck between loyalty to her girlfriend and frustration with the growing conflict. But she never stepped in to truly stop Amanda, and that made me question where her loyalty really lay. The breaking point came one evening when I came home to find Amanda in the middle of another test. She had spread dough across the counters, flour all over the floor, pans stacked high in the sink, and a huge pot simmering on the stove. "Are you kidding me?" I said, dropping my bag. She glanced at me, casual as ever. "Oh, don't worry, this isn't for business. It's just practice." "Practice?" I repeated. "Yeah," she said with a fake sweet smile. "Can't I bake in the kitchen for fun? Or is that against the rules too?" I stood there speechless, because technically, she wasn't breaking the exact words of what I had said. She wasn't selling food out of the apartment, she was just cooking. But the mess, the smell, the complete disregard for anyone else living here, it was obvious she was doing it to push me. And it worked. I felt the anger boiling inside me, hotter than the soup on the stove. But instead of yelling, I turned and went back to my room. Because this time, I knew what I had to do. If Amanda wanted to play dirty, I'd go higher. And I was about to involve someone who had the power to end her little games once and for all. The landlord. By the time I made the decision, I wasn't even second-guessing it anymore. I had tried setting boundaries. I had tried being polite. I had even endured Amanda's petty little revenge games. But if she thought she could keep escalating and that I'd just sit back quietly, she had underestimated me. That night, I organized everything. I had collected photos of the messes, screenshots of my receipts compared to the food missing from the fridge, even a video where Amanda's voice could be heard laughing about borrowing my groceries. I put it all in a neat folder on my laptop, labeled plainly, Amanda Problems. The next morning, I called our landlord, Mr. Harris. He was a straightforward, no-nonsense man in his 60s, who lived just a few blocks away. I explained the situation as calmly as I could, leaving out the pettiness and focusing on the facts. Unauthorized business use of the property, damage to shared appliances, and a hostile living environment. He listened in silence, then asked, "Do you have proof?" "I do," I said, and I could almost hear him nodding over the phone. "Good, email it to me. I'll stop by this week." When I hung up, I felt relief wash over me. Finally, someone with authority would step in. 2 days later, Mr. Harris came by. Claire was home, but Amanda wasn't, thankfully. I showed him the photos and explained what had been going on. He frowned as he flipped through them, muttering, "This is exactly what the lease is supposed to prevent." Claire shifted uncomfortably on the couch, clearly annoyed that I had gone to him behind her back. "It's not that serious," she said quickly. "Amanda she just likes to cook a lot. It's not a business. She's not selling anything here." Mr. Harris gave her a sharp look. "That may be, but I've been a landlord long enough to know when tenants are trying to bend the rules. I don't want unauthorized catering or any kind of commercial activity happening in this apartment. If that continues, you'll both be in violation of the lease." Both. The word stung Claire, and I could see it in her face. She was realizing that Amanda's antics weren't just her problem anymore. They could jeopardize her home too. After he left, the apartment was silent. Claire wouldn't even look at me. Finally, she muttered, "You didn't have to go behind my back like that." I turned to her, tired and angry. "I gave you so many chances to stop this before it got to this point. You didn't. What else was I supposed to do?" She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her phone and started texting furiously. No doubt Amanda would know within minutes what had just happened. And sure enough, when Amanda showed up that evening, she stormed in like a hurricane. "Huh, so you ratted me out to the landlord?" she sneered, dropping her bag on the floor with a loud thud. "What are you, 12? "No," I said firmly. "I'm someone who pays rent and deserves a livable space without it turning into your side hustle kitchen." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "You just don't like me. That's what this is about. You're jealous." I almost laughed. "Jealous? Of what? That you can't respect boundaries? That you think you can freeload off other people's space and resources?" "No, Amanda. I'm not jealous. I'm fed up." Claire stood frozen between us, clearly wishing she could disappear. Amanda shook her head, smirking like she'd already won. "You think you're clever, but you won't get rid of me that easily?" And for a moment, I wondered what exactly she meant by that. Because if she was willing to retaliate with small pranks before, what would she do now that the landlord had officially put her on notice? I had a feeling things were about to get a whole lot uglier. Amanda did not take the landlord's warning as a deterrent. If anything, it seemed to fuel her. The day after Mr. Harris's visit, I noticed that my neatly labeled containers of leftovers in the fridge were mysteriously missing again. At first, I thought maybe Claire had eaten them, but then I caught Amanda reheating one of my meals in the microwave, brazen as ever. "Are you serious?" I snapped, pointing at the container. "That's mine. You know it's mine." She just shrugged, fork halfway to her mouth. "What, this? Oh, I thought it was Claire's. My bad." Her tone dripped with sarcasm. Claire tried to intervene, but her half-hearted, "Amanda, maybe you shouldn't," only made me angrier. It was clear she wasn't willing to actually stop Amanda from pushing every button she could find. But food theft wasn't the worst of it. Amanda's retaliation became creative. She started accidentally, leaving grease splatters all over the stovetop after cooking. She borrowed my dish soap without asking, replacing it with watered-down versions that barely worked. Once, she left raw chicken defrosting directly on the counter and then disappeared for hours, leaving me to clean up the mess before it became a health hazard. It was clear what she was doing. She couldn't openly defy the landlord's warning, so she turned her frustration into making my life as inconvenient and uncomfortable as possible. Claire and I grew more distant with each passing day. She no longer even pretended to mediate. If anything, she seemed annoyed that I wouldn't just let it go. We used to share meals or talk about our days, but now she avoided me, retreating into her room with Amanda like they were a united front against me. One night, I came home from work late, exhausted, and found the entire kitchen taken over again. Amanda had trays of pastries cooling on every surface, flour dusted across the counter, and mixing bowls piled high in the sink. The smell was sweet, but all I felt was dread. "You're doing it again," I said, setting down my bag. Amanda didn't even look up from her work. "Relax, I'm just baking for fun. Nothing illegal about that, right?" I could hear the mocking tone. She was daring me to do something, knowing she could spin it as innocent if anyone asked. "Does for fun involve another catering order?" I asked. Her smirk gave me my answer. That was the breaking point for me. I couldn't live like this, constantly stressed in my own home, paying rent for a space that had been turned into a war zone. That night, I lay in bed replaying everything in my head, from the first moment Amanda started showing up with her little business to this latest stunt. By morning, I had made a decision. If Amanda wanted to escalate, so would I. I pulled out the lease agreement again, highlighted the parts about unauthorized business activities, damage to property, and tenant responsibilities. Then I began drafting an email, not just to Mr. Harris, but also attaching evidence of Amanda's continued catering operations after his explicit warning. This time, I wasn't going to settle for a slap on the wrist. I wanted consequences. But as I typed, I couldn't shake one question from my mind. Where would this leave Claire Because as much as Amanda was the obvious problem, Claire's silence had made her complicit, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the fallout of putting them both in the landlord's crosshairs. Still, something had to give, and soon. The morning after I sent the email with all the documentation attached, I felt both anxious and relieved. Anxious because I knew this would trigger something big. Relieved because at least I wasn't carrying this alone anymore. Mr. Harris was notoriously no nonsense, and I knew he wouldn't ignore the evidence. I didn't have to wait long. That same afternoon, Claire texted me, "We need to talk when you get home. It's important." My stomach dropped. Clearly, Mr. Harris had already reached out. When I walked into the apartment, the tension was immediate. Claire sat on the couch, arms crossed, while Amanda paced back and forth like a storm cloud ready to burst. The moment I closed the door, Amanda whirled on me. "Are you seriously trying to get me evicted?" she spat, her voice louder than it had ever been before. "I'm not trying to get you evicted," I replied, keeping my tone as even as I could. "I'm trying to live in peace without my home being turned into your bakery." Claire cut in, her voice tight. "Mr. Harris called me at work. He said if this continues, both of us are at risk of losing the lease. Both of us. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," I said firmly. "It means Amanda needs to stop. And you need to stop enabling her." Amanda laughed bitterly. "Wow. So now I'm the villain because I work hard? Because I'm actually building something for myself? You should be ashamed of yourself for tearing down someone who's trying to succeed." I stared at her in disbelief. "Amanda, you're not just baking cookies. You're running a business out of an apartment you don't even pay rent for. And you've ignored every boundary I set, every warning from the landlord. This isn't ambition. It's selfishness." Her face twisted with anger, but Claire looked even more conflicted. For the first time, I could see cracks forming in her loyalty. She looked at Amanda, then at me, and whispered, "He said if there's one more complaint, he'll terminate the lease. No more warnings." That was the ultimatum. Either Amanda stopped, or we'd both be out on the street. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak in the apartment felt heavier. Every noise in the kitchen made me tense up. I kept wondering if Amanda would actually take this seriously or if she'd push until we all went down together. The next few days were eerily quiet. Amanda didn't bake, didn't bring in ingredients, didn't clutter the kitchen. It felt almost normal again. But her presence was suffocating. She gave me glares whenever we crossed paths, and Claire barely spoke a word to me. The air was thick with unspoken tension. Then, one Friday evening, I came home and smelled it again. The unmistakable aroma of cinnamon and sugar wafting through the hall before I even opened the door. My pulse quickened. When I stepped inside, there it was. Trays of cupcakes cooling on the counters, Amanda humming to herself as if nothing had happened. Claire sat at the table looking guilty but silent. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone, snapped a few photos, and walked straight into my room. If Amanda thought I was bluffing, she was about to find out otherwise. I sent the photos to Mr. Harris that night with a simple message. "She's at it again. You warned her. I can't live like this anymore." Then I turned off my phone and sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the muffled laughter and clinking trays from the kitchen. I felt like I was waiting for an inevitable crash. The crash came the next morning. Mr. Harris called Claire directly and told her the lease would be terminated within 30 days. No appeal, no exceptions. He had already given us more chances than he usually would, and Amanda's blatant disregard sealed the deal. When Claire broke the news, Amanda exploded. "This is your fault," she screamed at me, her voice echoing off the walls. "You just couldn't mind your own business. You couldn't let me live my dream. Now we're all screwed because you're petty and selfish." I finally snapped. "Petty? Selfish? Amanda, I was fine sharing space with you until you turned it into a commercial kitchen. You risked our lease, ignored every boundary, and acted like your side hustle mattered more than my home. This is not my fault. It's yours." For once, Claire didn't defend her. She sat with her head in her hands, looking exhausted. Amanda, he's right. You pushed too far. I begged you to slow down, to compromise, but you didn't listen. Now we're both paying the price. Amanda stormed off to their room, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I stood in the living room, stunned. A small part of me wanted to feel guilty about the eviction, but instead, I felt something else. Freedom. The next month was chaos packing, arguing, silence. Claire eventually found another place, moving in with her cousin across town. Amanda, from what I heard, went to stay with a friend and continued her baking. Though without a proper kitchen, it wasn't nearly as successful. As for me, I found a studio apartment on my own. Smaller, quieter, but it was mine. No trays of cookies covering the counters, no strangers coming in and out, no landlord warnings hanging over my head, just peace. Looking back, I realized something important. Sometimes standing your ground isn't about winning. It's about refusing to be trampled. Amanda thought her ambition justified everything. Claire thought loyalty meant enabling. But I finally understood that my boundaries mattered too. The day I unpacked the last box in my new place, I sat on the couch with a coffee in hand, breathing in the silence. For the first time in months, the air smelled like nothing at all, and that was perfect.